There's a news story guaranteed to piss you off that no one's covered.
All
You know, a
right.
Holocaust museum in Florida put up an exhibit for George Floyd.
Okay, these are features focusing in the one. Okay. Well, this is a very anti George Floyd post. Like it's like all these are all the see this is right. This is the problem right here I have with this. Like I'm gonna read into it, but like the biggest thank you, I appreciate that. The biggest problem I have with this is like it's all this diminishing language, right? So like George Floyd, yeah, there are other factors, but this dude was like killed by police officers, right? 100%, like absolutely police brutality, lack of accountability for police. But like it's all like, hey, he's a petty burglar, ex-con, fentanyl, methamphetamines, he had a hypertensive heart disease, and it's like all these things subtextually say that like the police officer is like innocent. You understand what I'm saying? So like this article is gross. Sean with the second degree intentional murder and second degree homicide. He's currently on bail, awaiting trial for what's painful, unnecessary, and the race riots. Yeah, see, look at this. Like the race, like listen, like I don't think it's a race issue, but like to say that the riots themselves are unnecessary again, clearly very much of an agenda. Rather than taking accountable for when they violate the law postal code. That's what they did. Leaders follow the law. That he wouldn't be surprising. Okay, as poor representation, I don't really care about this, but the Holocaust Memorial Resource and Education Center boasts of the powerful pictures, locations. I don't know, guys. I'm not a big fan of lumping this in with the Holocaust. This seems a little bad. All I'm saying is like that's it's a tough take, but
Holocaust Memorial Resource and Education Center is showcasing today. The Holocaust Memorial Resource and Education Center is showcasing a new exhibit.
It displays powerful images taken after the death of George Floyd. As News 6's Ezzy Castro got a look at this exhibit and spoke to the photographer who captured moments he says he'll never forget.
When you walk inside the Holocaust Center in Maitland, you'll be able to see some of the faces of those who mourn the death of George Floyd, a black man who died in police custody in Minneapolis on Memorial Day. His death sparked protests across the city and around the country. The portraits captured by photographer John Noltner.
When George Floyd was killed, that happened 11.6 miles north of my house. And I knew, with a piece of my mind's goal being to hear voices that aren't always heard as well as they should be, I knew that I wanted to go up to that site.
Just days after Floyd's death, Noltner came to the site where dozens were gathering, many who were still trying to process the tragedy in their community. And he decided to capture the tears behind his lens.
What was the vibe? What was the feeling that you were feeling when you arrived to that location?
There was clearly pain and frustration and mourning happening, but it was a space that was open to anybody who wanted to show up and understand what was going on.
The exhibit shows 45 strangers, each of them sharing their own message to the world.
And one of the portraits that you can see here is the father of Michael Brown Jr., who was fatally shot by police in 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri.
So my goal is for people to simply come through the exhibit, to hear these stories, to look at these faces, and to be open to considering the world in a new way.
And the exhibit is free to the public and will be open on Sundays and Mondays here at the Holocaust Center. For more information, you can find out more on clickorlando.com.
To simply come through the exhibit.
Fucking Christ. I don't know, guys. I'm just saying this does not really sit very well with me.
Orlando.com. In Maitland, Ezzy Castro getting.
I don't know, dude. This sits rather poorly with me. Listen, I don't know. Listen, I don't. What else is in the Holocaust Center? Like, is this the first instance of something reaching outside? I don't know. Listen, I don't know what they do in the Holocaust Center. I don't know. Listen, here's the thing, because like I don't want to be super reactionary and be like, oh, this is terrible. Like the first thought is like, hey, listen, this is a Holocaust Center, right? So it's supposed to be specifically for the Holocaust, right? That's like the first thing. And like my brain goes to, with a lot of you guys have been saying, it's like, you know, we're comparing this situation to the murder or the genocide of 6 million Jews. I would say this is not very comparable. This is tough, bro. This is tough. This is a harsh one. This is not easy, right? You know, when it comes to like the George Floyd situation, I maintained the same perspective over the summer that like I don't think it was ever a race issue. You know, this was certainly an example of like police. I would say police brutality. I understand he was resisting and whatnot, but like, you know, as a police officer, this is a police officer's job to deal with. You know, we can go with like the 8 minutes that the officer had on his back. You know, I have no problem with the officer getting charged. You know, he's clearly unfit to work. But I don't know, man. This is a little too much for me. And like, I don't know. Like maybe I don't know too much about the Holocaust Center. Maybe they do like a bunch of other things. This might be like a temporary exhibit. Okay, fine. My thing is like I just feel like if you were gonna pick an event that like was much more indicative of like Black Lives Matter representation, to me it's not George Floyd. To me it's like Breonna Taylor. Right? Like Breonna Taylor to me is like that's the example of a Black Lives Matter. That's the face of Black Lives Matter to me. You know, I don't know if that was necessarily a race issue, but that's an issue of that woman getting murdered by police officers with complete just criminal. The system was just completely corrupt and criminal, and just like there was so many issues through the pipeline. The warrant was completely unjustified. It was based on a false pretense that the post office had confirmed that she had drug packages in the mail. They knew where the guy was. They had pretty high. They basically knew where the guy was that they were looking for. I think it was Jamarcus Glover. They still executed this warrant. They were told to knock, even though it was a no-knock warrant. Their superiors went on record saying they were supposed to knock. They said they announced, but it was only loud enough for one of 12 witnesses to hear. They walked in, a man with a legally obtained firearm defended himself against somebody that he felt was an intruder, totally, and then like she died for nothing. Right, so like to me, Breonna Taylor, massive issue up and down. One of the police officers even walked into the crime scene, which is against the law. Like, that's the situation, right? But like George Floyd, and then like I don't want to be that guy again. But then we look at like, you know, this is the father of Michael Brown, and it's like again, Michael Brown, not a great representation of the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Okay. That situation is complicated, but like Michael Brown, the hands up don't shoot narrative was false. Michael Brown was charging a police officer. All shots entered the front of his body. The police officer, and I don't see this lightly, but was justified in the killing. the conversation around Michael Brown needs to be less of championing Michael Brown and more having the conversation about the DOJ report that talked about the fact that the police officers in that area were violating the constitutional rights of Black Americans in that area. You know, the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights. An example of which was over ticketing them, which gave them, you know, basically a flat tax on them, so they had less money. But like, we don't have that complicated situation, right? We don't have that conversation. We don't have that complicated conversation when we talk about Michael Brown. We often like, you know, the Black Lives Matter memorializes Michael Brown, and it's just not a good. And I'm not trying to be like insensitive, but like, this feels insensitive, and like, this doesn't make me feel like Black Lives Matter is like a group that's not worth supporting. It is, right? Like, there are issues in the Black community. There are issues of systemic racism. These are things that we have to deal with. But I don't think that this really helps anything. I don't think that this really. I don't think that this is necessarily galvanizing. I think this is like, this makes like a lot of like very progressive people go, "Ooh, yay!" and then it makes a lot of moderates go, "Oh, uncomfortable." And like, the biggest thing that gets me is that the only reason that and this is honest, and this is going to be harsh, but this is the only reason that the George Floyd situation was popular was because of the coronavirus, and everybody was home and they were bored and they wanted to have a meltdown. Like, people weren't at work. The coronavirus kept them inside. They were already angsty and frustrated. They were sitting on social media. This happened and it exploded because people didn't have a job. They were just not working. I know that's a tough take. It's just like, this whole thing, this feels, you know, somewhat insensitive. And I'm not like an identity guy, but I mean, like, you know, I got like some Jewish blood in me. But yeah, I don't know. This is kind of gross. To me, bro. To me. I want to say thank you so much, guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah. I love you all.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.